A look at a few news articles. This one I thought was pretty interesting. They have smart padlocks, and so these smart padlocks have a mobile application, and so I was very pleased to look at the techniques used here. They're almost all covered in my courses. So he intercepted the wireless communications, which we haven't done with Bluetooth sniffers, which is interesting, and it'd be fun to play with that. But then he reversed the Android application using JADX GUI and rooted Pixel 2 and Frida, the stuff we're using in the hacking mobile devices class, although we may not be using Frida this semester, we'll see. But anyway, the point is he was able to look in there and find that it's using AES encryption with a fixed key, but he couldn't find the key. And all right. So he was able to use Frida to increase the logging, and then he's able to see that it's using AES encryption, and then he connected to the API. And if you've been taking the mobile device hacking class, this is kind of a funny thing. The number one vulnerability in mobile apps is not the app, it's the server. And that's what happened to him. He looked at the API where it connects to the server, and it sends the lock's password from the server, which never changes. So it sends some data here. Here's the password. It sends it down from the server, and he found that if you make a request for somebody else's lock on the API, it just gives you all that person's information. So it's an unprotected API call, which I mentioned is extremely common. I've found them too, where you can just request something that you're not supposed to see, and the API code fails to verify that you are authenticated first. And that turned out to be a serious flaw. So anyway, it's interesting to watch. Use these standard techniques. He was able to reverse this thing and find terrible vulnerabilities in it. Let me check for comments. Good evening. All right. Anyway, so this I'm amazed at. I'm not sure I understand this yet. Apparently they can set your smartphone on fire by hacking the wireless charger, and I didn't quite understand this yet. 3 types of attack. Damage devices through overcharging or overheating, and not enough interesting technical details here, but apparently they can overcharge it and cause their device to overheat or even catch on fire. So this reminds me of something I heard on Steve Gibson's podcast last week. He said that he leaves his smartphone charging all the time. He trusts the charging system of Apple to not overcharge it and don't worry about it. And I've been doing that too. He says it lasts longer that way. It's certainly more convenient that way, and that's because there is a exchange of information going on between the charger and the phone, so it doesn't overcharge it. And apparently that's what he overrides here, so it does overcharge your phone, and that would make it overheat. So that's good. Apple, I've heard about this for at least 10 years. Apparently it's been going on for 10 years. Let's see if there's anybody. Yeah, Apple I've been talking about making their own car. I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and now they have finally just canceled it. Apparently, they had many changes in staff. They kept changing their direction, and the electric vehicle market is slowing down, so it's less attractive. There's a lot more competition, and they finally decided to forget it. Apple's just not going to expand into this business. Apple is extremely rich and extremely successful, and you have to be careful what direction you go in. So apparently there is not going to be an Apple car. I know a lot of people have been waiting for it, thinking it would really be great. How does this? Yeah, that's all I know. Apparently you can make it overheat by overriding the code that would normally stop charging it when it's full. So now you may recall, maybe you won't, about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a company in downtown San Francisco, and maybe it was Square, where people were starting to argue about political issues on the company Slack or whatever they had for social networking, and the CEO just said, all right, from now on there'll be no discussion of politics at work, and if you want to quit, you can quit. And a couple people quit and the rest stayed, and they said this was really great. After that, it was much nicer to be at work. That's what a lot of people said. So apparently, UC has tried the same thing. Now, saying that at a private company is one thing. Saying it at a college is another thing. At colleges, they actually teach classes in politics and politically sensitive topics like DEI and sexuality and stuff, I don't understand how you can expect people not to have opinions at a college. And in general, colleges have learned to just have free speech. Although, as you probably saw a few months ago, the head of some federal colleges were hauled before Congress to explain why it is that they let Palestinians say overtly racist and violent things, but they wouldn't protect the Jews who felt threatened by it. And they didn't have any good answers for that. So anyway, UC has now tried this. They're going to try to keep opinions off UC websites. So this is something that's happened over and over again. And by the way, UC has done it before. Back in the 60s or so, I think UC passed a law saying that every professor at UC had to sign a pledge saying they'd never been a member of the Communist Party. And people were so outraged by requiring that everybody who could get another job left, and they lost all the good teachers at UC. And because of that, they instituted a funded program to bring in advanced graduate students to UC, and I eventually got one of those fellowships. I didn't find out until later what it was. It was funded just to restore the teachers who had been lost at UC Berkeley because of their last attempt to muzzle speech. So they're trying it again. Hopefully it will, they'll manage to knock this off before they drive everybody away again, because academics really do not like being silenced. Even if they have offensive things to say, they feel like should be allowed to say it. And they,
during the Vietnam War, there was some peace movement in the Berkeley. So whatever happened, they do the same thing.
This one, I think, was because of McCarthy, so I think it was in the 50s. In the Vietnam War, there was huge turmoil, and the students were taking over the buildings, and yet I never heard of them trying to make them shut up. And that was when Reagan was the governor. What he did is he just sent people. I don't. Maybe they did. It certainly didn't work. Berkeley became very, very angry and proud of being able to say anything they want. They had the first free speech movement then, and then the filthy speech movement. So I guess you're right. That was the response to it. But anyway, apparently they're going to do it all again. So here you are, a meat alternative, beef rice. What they do is they take rice and then they stick stem cells from beef in it and grow them in there. And they claim that this creates something with some more protein in it, and it is much, much less environmentally costly than raising cows. And so we'll see if that goes anywhere. Right now, it's
the same thing as a rice stew, right?
Technically, no. Apparently, more environmental than a rice stew. I know, yeah. But anyway, they say right now it doesn't really have that much protein in it, and just has to be improved more. And I don't know if anybody would ever want it. This reminds me of a very persistent right-wing thing. They say that the Democrats are going to take away your hamburgers, and there's talk about that. The environmental cost of beef is very high. So there are occasionally people that say we'd really be a lot better off if people would quit eating beef. It would be better for the people and better for the environment. But anyway, it's
no wonder the communists are not afraid of the U.S. anymore.
What's not in the U.S.?
The communists.
The company is not in the U.S.?
Communists in China, they don't afraid of the U.S. anymore.
We're not afraid of the U.S. Well, you think this is a stupid idea? Yeah, it is a pretty stupid idea. Right. Anyway, so this one is interesting, and I've heard about this before. The Europeans passed a law that requires the iPhone to stop limiting you to the Apple Store. So you can load apps from other stores. And so it's going to take effect next week in Europe. And what this guy did, which I thought, again, is very interesting, is he did the same attack that we're going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to demonstrate it in the mobile device hacking class, where you take an Android app, you take it apart, modify it, repack it, and you make a modified app. And he calls this attack repackaging. And he tried to do it for iOS apps and found, like I found on Android, that essentially every iOS app is vulnerable to this. They took 100 popular apps and they found that 93% of them can be repackaged and they still run. And this means that when there's a second store no longer under the control of Apple, you can put up fake apps, which will act and look just like the real app. But this is a very easy way to make a Trojan app, to take a real app and modify it.
Did this guy run it on the jailbreak iPhone or something?
Yeah, you can also sideload on an iPhone. You can put on a mobile device management package that allows it to run things on certain phones. So there are already ways to sideload, and some companies do that. But now they're going to have an official store available to everybody in Europe that is not controlled by Apple, or at least not equal to Apple. Now, Apple says they're going to charge a fee and limit what goes in that store. We're going to see what happens. But they said you can't have the only store.
Have you ever seen even for Android, there are a bunch of some of the phones that are like old phones that are like no longer supported by the manufacturer, but they are the Androids they put up up to date open source operating system out.
Yeah, there are alternatives. Yeah.
People, presumably the people can use the old phone to roll up the latest Android.
Yes, I think in principle you can take old Android and you can put more modern operating systems on them.
Have you found a trust source of those open source?
I don't know. I know that there are alternative stores, especially in China, where they block the official Google store.
But it's not trust, right? If you get into malware.
That's right. But the official Google store is also full of malware. So, but that's right. These alternative stores tend to be full of malware. That's been Apple's argument all along, is that they shouldn't allow any other stores, but the European regulators demanded it.
But I never find really like a trusted source for the Android.
Yes. Well, there is the Amazon store for the Kindle, which is an Android store, but it's in fact full of old, out-of-date stuff. Last time I looked. Yeah, I know. I'm not sure what you use for a trusted store, but whatever people use in China, they must know this because they can't get to the official Google Play Store. So everything they put on in China must come from some alternative app store, and I don't know what they are.
When you use a phone, you don't get holes. You get malware inside your phone already.
And there is a lot of Android malware, absolutely. Anyway, let me stop this recording.